Yeah, but with the K to celebrate basketball more than.
I mean, if you're going Luka, you got to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the C is.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL on the Contrary show. First of the postseason. We're through 18 weeks of the regular season and back at you with yet another edition of your favorite show every week. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D for those of you podcast listeners. And joining me back here once again, recent Millie Maker winner, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself at Awesemo DFS. What's good, brother? We've made it to the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing because postseason is so much more predictable than the regular season, and that week 18, it's just a little bit of a stressful experience. I don't know how you guys felt, but it's kind of cool because like all the weirdness was confined to that one Saturday slate, and then the Sunday slate was pretty normal, but still just a lot of work to parse through all the information there.
So you didn't see the Jaguars blowing out the Colts?
Yeah, that one was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, it was. And hey, joining us, I believe he actually kicked off the season with us. So it's a perfect way to put a bow on everything. Of course, we'll have one next week as well. But Chris Spags, one of our favorites here, used to be one of us, but he left us for bigger and better ventures. The VP of content at Edge Sports and Football Outsiders, and of course, co-host of the Splash Play podcast with Pete Overzet. What's good, brother? You moved to Pennsylvania. You got a baby on the way. You got big things happening. You're like an hour away from me now.
I know, I'm just trying to do the Lofty starters kit, moving out here, having a baby. I'm going to start rooting for the Eagles. Maybe it'll make me better at broadcasting. I think that's the hope, but I'm excited to be back here. I love this show. I always love doing contrarian picks. And I feel like for the playoffs, especially, I mean, now is the time more than ever that you got to get those contrarian picks into your lineup.
Studio looks great, man. I'm loving what you did there.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel
lights.
Yeah, trying to make strides here to make a professional appearance. It's funny because I'm literally doing, 3 shows a week now for Splash Play while we build up stuff behind the scenes because, like for me, I know people, you leave an Awesemo and people think you're going to do, the exact same thing. And it's like, no, like you guys are so good. And I think the chat too is sometimes surprised that I'm always watching live before lock. And when Eric or Greg will mention me or just Greg did a silly bit where he put on the deal with it sunglasses on his face on live before lock. And it's like, I'm watching this just like you guys because it's fun and you can't compete with this. Like I know other sites out there have tried, but the live before lock deeper dive duo there, like that's what you have to have on every night when playing NBA. So I'm going to do some other weird shit. I'll just do gimmicks with Pete every day on Splash Play in the hopes that we just do something different than try to tackle you guys.
We do miss you though, man. We had some good times for sure. So happy to have you back. And Alex, yes, your studio as well. The minimalist approach looks fantastic as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I thought you were complimenting me here, Mike, and I got like something in the corner, so. But Spags, I have to give it to you. Your studio is much better than mine.
I got to make up for the lack of quality somewhere. I think that's the main thing.
That's what I did,
itself
man.
is going to get me there.
That's what I did. I was like, during the pandemic, I have nothing to offer. Let me make this look decent in the background. All right, let's dive into this. We surprisingly have a lot to talk about. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go separate slate, chop them up. If you're watching after the fact, Tyler, let's throw a timestamp in here for when we go to the Sunday slate after this wraps. All right. And we got Saturday, 2 games, 3 games Sunday. But first things first, happy to have you guys with us as always. Thanks. We're at 71K subs, man, making that trek to 100,000 subscribers. And you know what's going to get us there? I'll tell you right now what's going to get us there. What's going to get us there, and I think Eric Lindquist might have said this. Maybe it was Greg yesterday. It's when we set up producer cam with Jordan Klein starting on Monday. Man, he is nervous, but that just makes it so much better. I mean, how can you not appreciate that? But hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Only takes a second. And if you hate it, just unsubscribe. You wake up in cold sweats regretting the decision. We got you, man. We'll gladly refund your misery. But if you want to join the channel, get the custom emojis, the super chats, free super chats each month, the badges, all that good stuff, priority questions and comments along with our Discord members. Hit that join below. Let's dive into it. Spags, I'll kick it off with you as our honorary guest. When it comes to a slate like this, right, with short slates, 2 games and then 3 games, we're not going to break down a 5 or 6 gamer because we just don't have time. How much exposure are you willing to get on certain players? Like, are you willing to go 90, 100% on certain players that you really feel confident in?
Football's always tough. Like with NBA, I'm definitely more willing to get there. And that's how I've had some of my best nights, that including the ones that helped me get this house. So I feel like that's the stuff that is a little bit different with NFL, where I've actually had to really couch my kind of expectations for players this year in particular, where I'm still using the Awesemo data and all of that. But like you see a guy like Joe Mixon, and he's going to be owned by 2/3 of the field on that Saturday slate. And the optimal rate is still higher, but you know that there are game scripts where he cannot get there, that just include, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase going off, that include the Raiders somehow keeping the ball away from them and pulling in a lead. Like there's still ways you could see that 25% of him not getting into an optimal lineup according to the Awesemo boom bust tool. And I think that's the sort of stuff you have to keep in mind with NFL a little bit more than NBA, especially in this season in particular, where things have been so wildly variant. But yeah, to me, like, I think I get if you have a play that's going to be 90 or 100% in your Saturday or Sunday slates, but it can't be one of the chalk guys, because I think you just have to account for the fact that there are these outcomes that everybody's expecting to happen, like the Colts game you mentioned, and then it just goes the other way.
Alex, what about you? Really same question here, just given that there aren't a lot of games and we've got some players coming in with pretty monstrous ownership. Nobody insane. Like Joe Mixon's up there, Waller's up there. Are you willing to just go heavily over the field on some of these 50+% players instead of getting different and getting away from them?
I'm definitely not afraid to lock in someone in a short slate, but
okay,
there's some interesting game theory at play here, because two of the most popular plays, Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs, first and third in ownership, like there's some negative correlation there, where on days where Mixon has a big day, Josh Jacobs will probably have less rushing attempts and vice versa. So I think there is some way to build lineups for this weekend where you're kind of trying to base it around the outcome of certain games instead of just trying to pick and choose the best plays in isolation.
All right, Alex, if I were to throw this on the flip side, are there spots that you're willing to fade entirely? Like, for example, a Mac Jones who's garnering like 9% ownership, 4 degrees at kickoff, not a pass heavy team, whereas the 3 other quarterbacks are all garnering a lot of ownership.
Yeah, that's I mean, like Mac Jones, I don't want to rule him out completely, like, because the ownership is kind of in line with what we're expecting there. And New England definitely might be forced to go more pass heavy, even if they don't want to. So going up against Buffalo, they're underdogs, and to some extent, the quarterback scoring just depends on, is it going to be like a rushing touchdown or passing touchdown, and you just don't know before the game. So I think Mac Jones is a reasonable play, but there are some guys that I'd be willing to completely fade. Like one example is Gabriel Davis, where his playing time had been up because Emmanuel Sanders was out, but Sanders is back this week. So it seems like people are still on Davis and not on Sanders. I don't really understand it, but if that's the case tomorrow, then I think Davis is a very risky play.
All right, boys, let's get into it. Spags, speaking of Gabe Davis, Mac Jones, and the like, you've got 4 degrees at kickoff at Highmark Stadium out there in Orchard Park, New York. Mac Jones, 9.6% ownership. The passing game here seems like it could struggle, but if we were to just take this and take a very basic look at it, it's not like the weather that we saw a couple months ago or whenever that was, where it was like 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds. It is really cold, but no real winds to speak of. How much are you factoring weather into your decision-making for this one?
I know it's something that we've talked about a lot on this channel over the course of years. And I know that Alex and Tom and Eddie have beaten into my head since we launched everything here, is that, just trust the Vegas total here. And the Vegas total will tell you enough that I don't need to worry about the weather. Like, it's already a low enough total here. The fact that this game is projected for under 45 points is, I think, saying enough about what you're expecting overall. The issue for me that I'm having is that I think everybody's writing off the Patriots. We've been doing a lot of best ball drafts with Underdog, which I know you guys are doing too. And, for the playoffs, and people are not drafting Patriots at all. I get they're not the sexiest fantasy team, but is there not a world where we think Bill Belichick's going to do the thing that he's done time and time again, where people write him off? He comes in with some game script that makes for a really ugly game and then gets the Patriots a win. I don't know that matters as much for DFS. It might matter when we talk about our favorite bets of the week a little bit later on in the show. But I do think the Patriots are live to win here. Josh Allen throwing picks, regressing to the worst version of himself. Not crazy. The issue is I don't know how that's Mac Jones related. I don't know how he's the one that forces it. I think if this game does go the Patriots' way, you got to think it's the running backs really driving the value.
So that's where I'm at too. And I got to tell you, Alex, I'll jump around a little bit here. I had some topics listed out, but fuck it. The Damian Harris ownership to me right now, and maybe you can tell me where I'm off base, but it seems extraordinarily low when you consider that, yes, okay, they might be the one team that won't run a bell cow. Like Devin Singletary is getting 80+% of snaps, you would think, with the way they're using him lately. Joe Mixon, no doubt about it. Josh Jacobs has been getting all of the work outside of a couple opportunities in the passing game for Jalen Richard. And Damian Harris is questionable, but I don't have any doubt he's going to play. When you come into a playoff game, this is a guy who in 2 games against Buffalo this season has 214 yards on 28 carries and 4 rushing touchdowns, averaging 7.6 yards per attempt. I mean, does it not feel like, even if we don't have him projected incredibly, that Damian Harris, with less than half the ownership of all of those other running backs, doesn't make sense in a cold weather game on a run first offense?
Well, I think that Damian Harris is definitely the toughest sell of the starting running backs. And the reason why is because of the workload, as you mentioned, and also because this isn't a game that we're necessarily expecting New England to be able to run the ball a ton of times. So if we go back to the previous weeks, Damian Harris only runs routes on somewhere between 10 and 30% of plays. So that's a negative. And then the workload with Ramondre Stevenson back, he missed that one game, and Damian Harris was a bell cow, but it seems to be maybe like whoever is playing better in that game. So I think last week Damian Harris had a big edge over Ramondre Stevenson, but if Stevenson gets the series and has pretty good results, that could pretty easily flip. So I think Harris is pretty risky.
Okay. What about you, Spags? I guess I'm on the other side of the fence on this one. I think he's risky, but I also just love the goal line upside. And if he does get hot, the massive ceiling you would think you'd see with a lot of opportunities and potentially a lower or less passing game. But where are you at in the backfield in general here for New England?
Yeah, I get the price point issues with Damian Harris, and I think there's probably a lot of situations where he does leave you holding the bag at that price. But I think to me, if this is a spot where you are trying to just get different and, going to be less than a quarter of the field on Damian Harris, I think that's one way you could do it. And I know Ramondre Stevenson is going to be even less owned. So I think I could see the logic in wanting to go there too. Probably more of a passing game script would help out Ramondre. But I think the one where the Patriots do have the lead and just sort of salt it away, they've shown time and time again, like even when this was a 50-50 split, that in those kind of game scripts, they do want to go Damian Harris's way a bit more, clearly trust him a little bit more. Ramondre more explosive, I think overall, and everything per touch wise does look like a better player, but Damian Harris fumbles less, does have that touchdown equity, does seem to get the higher volume days when they're ahead. I think that's the way the Patriots win, is just keeping, Buffalo at bay. And then, that's, if they don't do that, they're probably going to lose at the arm of Mac Jones. So I think to me, you're really just playing a particular lineup construction that, has a few dominoes that'll fall. Like if you're playing Damian Harris, probably no Bills in that lineup or less Bills in that lineup. You're also probably loading up on the early game. Like there's some ways to get there, I think, from a tournament perspective, but you really got to line up those contingencies that really end with the Patriots winning this game.
I'll give you a crazy stat. It's kind of unrelated, but Eckler, Gibson, and Harris are 2, 3, and 4 in red zone. We're 2, 3, and 4 in red zone carries this season with 48, 47, and 46 respectively. Jonathan Taylor was first with 89. How is that possible that he doubled them? He doubled up every other player in the league. I mean, sure, Derrick Henry would have been there, but my God, that's just insane. Alex, the passing game for New England, we talked about the low ownership on Mac Jones, which is, subsequently you're going to see lower ownership on most of the pass catchers here for New England. But Jacoby Myers is getting a little bit of love. You're seeing around 20% on guys like Hunter Henry as well. Do you want to target the passing game in the event that, like you said, maybe they're forced to throw more?
Yeah, I mean, we got to be targeting everyone here. It's all about the lineup construction. So I think New England wants to run the ball, but they'll throw if they have to. I mean, that's pretty much what we've seen all season. So if you do pick Jacoby Myers or Aguilar, Bourne, Henry, all reasonable plays, I think that you want to have a couple of Bills at least, just to make sure that you're kind of capturing that Buffalo is going to have a pretty good day for those guys to cross that threshold and get a decent amount of work.
Spags, pass catchers, New England. It's never pretty on this team. I mean, last week was heinous against Miami, but we don't have a ton of options.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody on New England in the pass catching. I know Kendrick Bourne has spiked some weeks here and there, but was always running less routes on the field for less snaps than the other guys. Nelson Aguilar has had days approaching usefulness, but not really kind of outlier efforts. Jacoby Myers, we all know the touchdown things that finally got that monkey off his back, but still, it's not like he's a touchdown machine since then, and it's positively regressed in a meaningful way. So I don't know who you trust, and you still have Hunter Henry out there getting a good amount of those snaps at tight end, with Jonnu Smith not being a factor, but maybe this is the week where Bill Belichick's been keeping Jonnu Smith in the garage, and he finally lets him loose for one of those, catch and run plays that he used to get all the time in Tennessee and hasn't had at all in New England. So I think that's sort of the crappy part of New England, and we all know that, is that you really can't trust any one player, in any sort of facet of the game. But with the running backs, at least there's like two guys there. It's now not like the five guys there's been in the last few years. With the wide receivers, I feel like Kendrick Bourne, relative to ownership and what we've seen upside wise, in the hopes that he can get more snaps, I think jumps out. But I don't really have the faith in that. Like, would I want to play him in half my lineups or really any of these guys? I just don't see how you'd feel that way.
Let me stick with you for a second, Spags, and break down these running backs a little further. We talked about Damian Harris, and I want to get into some potentially low-owned value backs, but those streets are ugly. First, though, the top-tier guys like Mixon, I use the term top-tier loosely, but Mixon, Jacobs, Singletary, they're all really popular, and I think rightfully so. I would probably want more Devin Singletary than Jacobs, although ownership suggests otherwise right now. But is there any strong lean you have one way or the other separating the three of these running backs tomorrow?
I mean, I think Mixon is the clear best one, which is why all the ownership's going there. Sure. You guys talk about a lot on the channel, is that, the ownership is usually pretty efficient and sharp and is indicating what looks like the best play on the surface, at least. So I think, to me, he's definitely in his own tier. But then when you account for the ownership, you can talk yourself into going other directions. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, like going to Josh Jacobs is one of those directions where you are getting direct leverage on Joe Mixon. The theory there would be that Josh Jacobs gets the ball more because they're keeping the ball away from Mixon's side, and then Mixon theoretically gets less touches because they're going to the pass game more. So I think Jacobs probably has the most appeal to me out of that group. But I do think Jacobs and Damian Harris kind of live to me as a running back grouping that doesn't include Mixon, that gets you on a different track than a lot of people. It counts for the Patriots winning. And I think that's obviously I'll be playing a bunch of different configurations. I don't want to act like I'm so sentimental at the idea of Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris, but those are two really good backs that have volume and have a pathway to having the upside. And I think for a 2-game slate, you got to just play those limited windows of opportunity that could actually happen.
For sure. And Alex, when it comes to you with these running backs, and I want to, again, ask you about some of these super volatile, low volume ones down at the bottom. But as it stands right now, just based on our tools, based on the boom bust tool ownership, everything you're seeing, for people watching right now, asking the same question, are you differentiating in any big way between these three guys? And are there any that you're expecting to just, I don't want to say lock in, but I mean, Mixon's got 71 projected ownership, 52% for Jacobs, 47 for Singletary. They're all up there on a 2-gamer.
Yeah, I think that it's really hard to plant a flag here. I guess the main strategy I'm seeing is that maybe when you have Mixon, you want to have less Jacobs than you would otherwise, and vice versa. And you can do that. One thing you can do in Fantasy Cruncher is use their boost feature. So you can say, like, okay, if I have Mixon in my lineup, then adjust Jacobs' projection minus 15 or 20% or something like that. So those are the kind of correlations maybe you want to factor in here, because I'm sure most people aren't going to really worry about, okay, I have Mixon and the next best play is Jacobs, so I'll put Jacobs. So right. I think that is one way you could possibly get an edge here.
What about some of these lower owned plays? Like, once you get down to the non-starters, you're getting, weak projections for good reason. You're getting, and Spags did mention, both of us mentioned, I think all of us mentioned Ramondre Stevenson, but he's not exactly one of those dirt cheap, like almost min sal backs. Samaje Perine, Jalen Richard. Does Brandon Bolden get 5 targets, 6 targets if they fall behind? Zach Moss has been an afterthought over the past 5 weeks, even inactive in one of those games. I mean, is there anything here, or should we just be chasing value at wide receiver and tight end?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is like you look at these really cheap running backs, like Jalen Richard is 4K, projected for 4.4 points. And somehow we have him as being a 5% chance of being in the optimal lineup. So that really shows that maybe punting running back is a viable strategy this week, even though like Bolden and Richard like most likely are gonna not put up very much. So that's kind of interesting. The guy I'd stay away from is Samaje Perine because I just don't think he's going to play very much with mixed in playoffs where Perine got work in the passing game a little bit in the regular season, but I feel like in the playoffs they're just going to have Mixon out there almost all the time. But I think wide receiver, there's always some decent punts, so that's a good place to go for value too.
Spags, as they did in couples retreat, metaphorical gun to your head. If you had to pick from some of these guys, who would it be?
I think Brandon Bolden, I think just hearing Alex talk about that and the way you introduced him as a concept, I think does have some appeal to me. And we talked about Ramondre being very good on a per touch basis, but he is still a rookie back, and pass protection we know is always a thing in the playoffs and a thing for a guy, coach like Bill Belichick in particular, where if it takes really one play of Stevenson fumbling or blowing pass protection, and he could be out of that game because that they don't want guys bearing down on Mac Jones, given how they basically have kept him bubble wrapped all year as best they can. Yep. So I think that's a spot where you could see Bolden come in. That game script to me means that Buffalo pulled ahead. So like Alex is talking about, I think the boost function for a 2-game slate especially could be useful, where perhaps you have some, 2 Bills receivers, and you then give a boost to Brandon Bolden and X amount of lineups, I think would be a decent approach. But I think Brandon Bolden is kind of that James White guy, even though he's definitely not gotten the same amount of usage as White did historically, where he can come in and get, 5 catches and, maybe that's worth 50 receiving yards, maybe gets a touchdown. That could be enough to win a 2-game slate. So I think out of the guys we mentioned, I'd probably go his way over Jalen Richard or any of the other flotsam floating around out there on the 2-gamer.
Danny Green in chat, the Danny Green says, where is it? The value is at wide receiver. And I mean, Spags, I don't even disagree with that, because as much as we have all ragged on the wide receiver core for the Raiders, even before Henry Ruggs was imprisoned or in jail, they still have some value from time to time. Like, and I know Waller's back, so we're going to have to kind of break this down a little differently than we've done in the past, but Zay Jones has become, I won't say focal point, but he's become a big part of the offense. And then Bryan Edwards sporadically has those games where he actually does something. It's unlikely and unusual, but he's almost minimum salary. I mean, it does feel like, whether you want to or not, you have to at least entertain some cheap wide receivers from the Raiders this week in a game with the pretty decent total.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, I think, by Zay Jones. And I've been a really big Hunter Renfrow guy. Also probably got too much Darren Waller in best ball drafts. So that did not help out. He and Travis Kelce both, I think, can both go do something to themselves that I'll save for a less savory show than the Awesemo channel. But I will say that, like, to me, Zay Jones, I'm with you. I think it's an interesting play. There was also a nice clip of him floating around, giving some encouragement to Rich Bisaccia and saying, "You're doing a great job, coach." Maybe he's just politicking for some more touches in the playoffs. I think there were some routes that could make sense there. Just desperation too. The Bengals, we know, have a really high-powered offense. You definitely see Zay Jones, get one of those Hail Mary type throws or just deep balls that he actually has had a handful of times this year, which are not very common in this Raiders offense since Ruggs did go to jail. So I'm with you on Zay Jones. I think he's interesting. And overall, I think the Raiders, just their lack of, really honing in on one target, like they definitely do like Waller, they do like Renfrow, but they're willing to spread it around, and Derek Carr certainly will hit whoever the open man is. I think in terms of just a GPP guy bubbling up at receiver, being cheap enough, and then somehow walking into a 50-yard TD, I think the Raiders are probably the most likely team to have that outcome.
Tyler, have we had these the badges for a year yet? I don't see anyone that has. Yeah, I don't know. I was just looking at it. That 12-month badge is sick. I'm at 8 months and 29 days. Someone's got to be close. I don't know. It's completely off topic and unnecessary. But Alex, when it comes to these wide receivers, the cheap ones specifically, like you got Vegas, you got Buffalo, but like you said, Gabriel Davis becomes a whole lot less appealing with Emmanuel Sanders back in the mix, right? You got New England, but that's not a pretty spot to get to. And then you have like a Tyler Boyd from Cincinnati. We can talk about CJ Usama being a pretty decent option. Where is the value at wide receiver and really pass catchers in general?
So I think sub 4K, you got two options. I guess Zay Jones is 4K. He's probably the best option. We have him as being almost a 1 in 3 chance of being the perfect lineup.
Solid.
Yeah, that's a lot higher than you'd expect, and it's just because you really need to hit that value play. And then the other guy is Nelson Aguilar. He's kind of that deep threat for New England. Doesn't get targeted a ton, but he did play on 97% of snaps last week. And then Deshaun Jackson, he's a guy that maybe I'm going to avoid because in that must-win game last week versus the Chargers, he only played on 18% of passing plays. Zay Jones and Bryan Edwards seem to have kind of outcompeted him at this point. And the other guy that I'm looking at is Bryan Edwards at only 3,300. He's only been targeted 11% of the time this year, but his play time is significant. So he's a guy that's a boom and bust play.
It is kind of wild though, Spags. I mean, you look since week 13, and that was the first week that Waller missed. Zay Jones and Renfrow have the same target share. So if I had asked you, how do you project what this target share looks like? It's a difficult question, but now that Waller's back, coming off a, clearly rusty, but 9-target game, what do you think we see in terms of target distribution, especially given that we know this Bengals team can score points? Shit, dude, Burrow's thrown for almost 1,000 yards over the last 2 weeks. Well, last 2 games he's played.
I mean, I think Hunter Renfrow is still going to be the first look for Derek Carr. Like, he's clearly been a safety blanket, been a lower ADOT guy who Carr has piled up targets when we've seen Waller be out. But I think Zay Jones, this particular matchup, and not to immediately launch into shilling for my new company, but Football Outsiders, we do DVOA over there. Of course, one of the most known stats at a reference.
Shill away. I reference it all the time.
Yeah, it's fun. We also get reference and DK notifications all the time, and I'll tell you what, they don't attribute once. They just say DVOA like it's a magic number that comes out of the air, but it's at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. But we have an 18.3% wide receiver boost according to DVOA to wide receiver 2s, and a 12% drop for the Bengals defense on the year against wide receiver 1s. And I think Hunter Renfrow to me is unequivocally, treated as a wide receiver 1 in this offense with those looks. Obviously, Darren Waller, you can make that case too, but that is a separate split for how we look at that stuff at Football Outsiders. And I'd say that does give me a reason to have some faith in Zay Jones. Like, I like Renfrow as a player. The price tag, though, is so high. It really just takes one play for Zay Jones to beat his value on the day, whereas Renfrow probably needs like a 10-catch, 100-yard day to be, in the hunt for being in that final winning lineup at his price tag on DK. So I think taking Zay Jones stabs and just shaving a little bit off Hunter Renfrow probably would be the move, even though Renfrow is, to me, like the best receiver in this group.
I agree. But Zay Jones, too, is someone who'll get a couple red zone targets. Obviously, Renfrow is a preferred option there, but yeah, I think it's that, and even Edwards, as gross as it sounds. Alex, we've done a pretty good job of covering this 2-game or just bouncing around to the most important stuff. So let's wrap it with this and then talk Sunday. When it comes to Jamar Chase and Stefon Diggs, is there anything that you differentiate there? Are you just trying to get a decent amount of both of them? Do you prefer one over the other, given that they're so close in price this week?
Yeah, I think the thing is you don't need a crazy score from these guys to be in the winning lineup, because usually with wide receiver, there aren't that many guys that would get over 10 on a 2-game slate. So even if they just get their Chase, we have for 17 points, Diggs for 16 points, even if they just get that average performance, it could very well be good enough. As far as which one to go to, I think Chase has the better matchup and the weather is a lot better. Buffalo does let's see, the base passing rates of these teams. Buffalo's at 37%, Cincinnati's at 42%, so Buffalo passes a little bit more. That might be negated a little bit because of the weather, but at least it's not windy. So honestly, it's a coin flip for me.
Spags, if you're playing three max or single entries, right? where are your preferred stacks? Obviously, you want to get to a little bit of everything, maybe not the Patriots, but where would your preferred stacks be with Allen and Burrow essentially getting the same ownership and then Carr coming in not that far behind them, but at a much cheaper price?
I think for a single entry, I would try to do the route I was talking about earlier of going Josh Jacobs' way and then going with a full Bengals stack. And then, I think Jamar Chase is still probably the option I would trust the most. But I think you can certainly get to a Higgins Boyd stack or even, Higgins Uzoma, I think is an option too, given the tight end boost that's been given up on the year by the Vegas defense, giving up an 18.3% boost to tight ends overall, which is actually 25th in the league. So a pretty low number for them. But I think that's sort of the approach that I like the most, getting away from Mixon to shave off that ownership, going to the Raiders, hoping that they have a lead and then, probably blow it down the stretch to a Bengals team with a high total. But I think the Bills, just the difference in totals here, Alex mentioning the passing rates, I think is certainly a factor to keep in mind too. But the weather, low totals, I think you just have to trust the Bengals offense a little bit more going against a Raiders team that's given up a lot of production. Whereas the Patriots, they could pull out, that Super Bowl special where they completely shut down the Rams on a year where they were doing everything and blowing up against everybody. Wouldn't surprise me here, even though obviously the talent's different and all of that. So I think there's a lot more risk to the Bills than there is for the Bengals, where I just don't know how the Bengals would somehow not score points.
I don't disagree. And I feel like, Alex, CJ Osama I'm not saying he's super cheap, but I do think it's pretty reasonable given that he is part of this game plan every week. And when you have a high-powered offense like this that's chucking the ball around and racking up insane passing yards against, by the way, decent enough defenses, do you think the fact that we get a cheap tight end who's involved in the offense plus a cheap Tyler Boyd just makes them that much more appealing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, tight end, there really aren't very many great options aside from Darren Waller this week, or on Saturday. So Uzoma is the best value among the remaining tight ends. So he's a great play. And then, I mean, if you like the receivers, you're going to like the quarterback. So I think Burrow, certainly a great option. One thing I like to do in these slates is a super onslaught where you just take a bunch of guys from the same team. So I think you could pull that off pretty easily with Cincinnati. They have a 54% chance of being the top stack according to our top stack tool. So all the factors are looking good there.
Yeah, and I keep coming up with good questions, so forgive me for not turning the page yet. Spags, on a two-gamer, I also have no problem with, and I want to know where you're at here, with Joe Mixon plus T. Higgins without Joe Burrow or something like that. It just seems that there's a lot of ways it can get there, especially if you have Derek Carr on the other side of that, running it back with multiple of his pass catchers or something to that extent.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's certainly an approach you can make here. Mixon doesn't derive a lot of the value from the pass game, so I probably wouldn't want to play him a ton alongside Burrow unless you are going for that full onslaught like Alex is talking about. So yeah, I think the Mixon and plus Higgins or one of Higgins or Chase or Boyd.
Yeah, any of them.
Yeah, I think it's all the same principle there, but I'm with you. That's like a viable pathway. And maybe if you do put Uzoma there instead of Chase or instead of Higgins, it's probably a different construction than a lot of people out there. So you're getting different than that, 2/3 of the field that's going to be on Mixon.
No doubt. Hey, if you haven't checked out our sponsor Prize Picks yet, well, there's three really good reasons to do so. First of all, it's just a sick site or app if you're on your phone and your iPhone, the Apple Store, the Google Play Store, wherever it is, or you're going to prizepicks.com. It's a sick site where you have player prop contests, no sharks, optimizers, anything like that. You're just using props without juice on either side, taking the over or the under and building lineups of 2, 3, 4, or 5 players. It's that simple. You've 10x your entry if you hit 5 of 5. And unlike traditional books, this is a key factor here. If you hit 4 of 5, you still 2x, right? You're not just going 4 of 5 and getting nothing back in return. If you 3 of 5, you still make money back. And that's huge over at Prize Picks. Plus, it just looks nice, right? Like the experience for the user is great. But aside from all of that, if you use the promo code Awesemo, get $100 up to $100 first match deposit bonus. And if you use the link that Tyler is going to throw in the chat right now, or the link that's in the description already of this video, get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, $90 value, everything on the site, ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, lineup builder, even after NFL's over. I mean, it's every sport. So you got baseball, golf is back in full swing. All of these sports, all the content out there, or any contest, we got content for it over there. And we have the free player prop tool and Odd Chopper that you can take advantage of. So get your free month. We'll hit you up in 24 to 48 hours, get you set up, get you into our premium Discord, into our office hours chat as well, where you got the pros helping you better your game each and every day. Tyler's got it up on the screen right now, showing you right there. Look at that job right there. A little demonstration on how to play Prize Picks. Good work, sir. Yeah, check it out. prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Awesemo. Use the link in the description. Get $100 when you sign up using our promo code Awesemo, plus a $90 value. Awesemo Plus, full month, everything on the site when you head over to Prize Picks and start playing. So we'll see you over there. prizepicks.com, sponsor of the On the Contrary show. Fellas, it's time to talk Sunday football. And Alex, I think we have to kick it off with weather at Raymond James State. I think it's called Raymond James Stadium, right? In Tampa.
I don't think that's changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, the naming rights sold to Tyler, and now it's the crooked Scarface poster in the background. See, the people need producer cam, otherwise they would know if they could.
Dude, Tyler's been doing this new thing now where he just will like completely turn the lights off or cover up his screen. Yeah, like that.
So he used to do that all the time on the morning MLB shows, that he would just disappear and doing what? I don't know.
Right. He says he's eating, but you know. Debatable, highly questioned. Am I right? Yeah, maybe we shouldn't do producer cap.
Yeah, save that for Jordan's apartment with his nice. I went to Jordan's place. One of the last people I saw in LA, his sick Marina Del Rey apartment. Like he's
you hung out there, didn't you?
Yeah.
That place is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to spoil too much here, but Jordan's apparently his family owns that building, and he's got like the access to everything, and like Jordan's got a sweeter setup than anybody out there realizes.
Yeah, I think his aunt is like a director or producer for
she's a Hollywood bigwig is what we'd call her.
A Hollywood for Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
And that's been running since like 1971. So
yeah, well, that's why Jordan's such a heartthrob, is he probably did a guest stint on Grey's Anatomy at some point, and all the ladies know.
You got to watch us at the end of yesterday's deeper dive and Live Before Locks.
I'm telling you, I'm watching every day. I'm doing my lineups to keep you guys on. I saw the Kmart announcement. Jordan's really embracing the character work that I've personally always wanted to see on the season.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah. And by embracing, it's like, Jordan, you better do this, please. It'll be great. And he's like, all right, hit him with a stick off camera. Yeah. Dude, he takes everything in stride though. So appreciate it. And Tyler too, man. We got some phenomenal producers around this way, putting in the work. Shout out to our boy, Tyler Zander. All right, Alex, sustained winds of 23 to 30 miles per hour. Now, look, like you've said, and I think like Spags said earlier, you have to just, look at Vegas and see if anything's moving. And it moved a little. I mean, at one point it was 9.5, opened at 8.5. It's down to 8. Does this benefit the Eagles, who have the highest run play percentage in the league, compared to the Bucks, who have the lowest run play percentage in the league, if we really are looking at potential 30 mile per hour sustained wins throughout this game?
Yeah, I mean, the wind here is going to be a factor. So it's going to be a downgrade to the passing offenses of both teams. With the Eagles, it's hard to say it's like such a huge difference maker for one particular team, because if the Eagles get down and they have to throw, then it's going to be even harder to make a comeback, and vice versa. So, but Philadelphia, like running the ball more, should benefit more from the winds being high. So I think this one's interesting because usually Brady would be that guy we want to stack up, but the conditions here seem surprisingly bad in Tampa. So maybe it's not as obvious when you got some other good quarterbacks in that slate.
For sure. I mean, it's such a weird spot, Spags, because we know the Eagles want to run. You know that there's no way they, in my opinion, stay competitive unless they run. I really believe that too. No team attempted fewer passes than the Eagles this season. But at the same time, Tampa's got a good run defense. They've been kind of pedestrian over the last month and a half, though. So whatever. And the Eagles have a great blocking offensive line. The problem is, though, who do you even go to for the Eagles run game if you wanted to exploit this area of the game and exploit the weather here and kind of tell yourself a story?
I mean, it seems like they're going to play Miles Sanders, even with his semi-broken hand at this point. So I don't know that I have a lot of trust there.
Guy fumbles enough already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And too, like because they have the stable of backs, like they would love to get Boston Scott in the second that Miles Sanders is ineffective.
Yep.
Jordan Howard's also been like shockingly good this year relative to what you expect of a Jordan Howard and Gainwell. I know Laffy, as I do, being in this area, like people love Kenneth Gainwell in the Philly area. And he showed a lot earlier in the year. And, there is some logic to getting him in the mix, giving him some check down passes and seeing what we can do in open space. But I'm with you. Like, I agree. Like, I think it's hard to trust these guys. The fact the total hasn't moved for the Bucks at all, though, they still have over 27-point implied total. I think that's the run game you really want to target. And for the Sunday slate, like Fournette being back in, hamstring or not, I think that's where a lot of the money is going to be made, is just trusting Fournette, like people have not been willing to do all year, despite the crazy workload and share of the offense that he has.
And the insane upside in the passing game for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy to me that you look at his last, since week 10, 9, 6, 8, 8, 7, and 7 targets. I mean, it's crazy. That's elite passing volume for a running back. And just to follow up on what Spags said, Alex, Leonard Fournette is, well, first of all, he's still questionable. Bruce Arians said he's trending in the right direction and he should have a chance to play. So we'll know soon enough. I don't know yet. He is getting an insane amount of ownership. But what's pretty amazing about this is if you look at Leonard Fournette, he still actually, he's not getting an insane amount. His optimal lineup score is 78%. At 45% projected ownership, we have him with a 33.2% leverage score. I mean, that's one of the wildest leverage scores you'll see for a guy that's already pulling almost 50% ownership.
Yeah, I think this one comes down to what you think is going to happen with Ronald Jones out, or doubtful technically right now. But if that work that in the regular season went to Ronald Jones goes to Fournette instead, I think that he's going to be on the field a lot more than a regular season game. They do have some other backs in there. They got Bell, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Gio Bernard, I think, is going to be healthy. So I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do there, but Fournette being out there most of the time seems like a given.
Sig Homie says Eagles' whole backfield is hurt. They ain't going to get nothing going. I wouldn't be worried about the backfield. I'd just be worried about the fact that Tampa scores a lot of points early and then forces them to get away from it. But no, Howard had a stinger. He sat last game. He was limited week 17, but he played. Boston Scott's fine. I wouldn't be worried about the injuries here. I am curious though, Alex, where do you go in the passing games for these guys? I mean, and I think we're all in agreement. Leonard Fournette, if he plays, is a spectacular option through and through. He is wildly underpriced. Somebody said, please talk me off of Miles Sanders. I can do that pretty easily. Leonard Fournette is $600 more expensive than him. Elijah Mitchell is 50 cents. Like there's a lot of mispriced running backs on this slate. But what do you do with the passing game in Philly, Tampa? Given the wins and given what we know about Godwin being out, Antonio Brown is gone. Cyril Grayson is doubtful to play. Rashad Perriman's questionable to play. Like this could be a huge day or volume day for guys like Evans and Gronk.
Definitely, yeah. The wins are kind of negated to some extent because of Antonio Brown and Godwin not playing for the Bucks at this point. So I think that Gronk and Evans are going to get much higher target shares than they normally do. They look like pretty solid plays despite the win.
Hit that thumbs up too. We got 350 people watching and 78 likes. If you forgot, I forgive you. It's fine, but 22 away from 100. That would be fantastic. Spags, do you look towards, and you can hit on Tampa too if you want to go back and forth here. But I do want to hit on somebody like Goddard, whose price has come down pretty considerably in a game where they might end up throwing more than they usually do.
Yeah, I mean, Goddard's certainly the lower ADOT guy out of him and Devonta Smith, and even Quez Watkins got Goddard getting 8.4 air yards per target compared to 15.2 for Devonta Smith. So you got to think, cutting through the wind, you're going to go to the guy who's going to be a shorter, distance target overall, and that is Goddard. We've also seen him have more volume. They have not shown. I don't think Devonta Smith's had a single 10-target game all year, whereas we have seen Goddard get there and then have the upside as well. So I think I'm with you. Like Goddard, to me, a very strong tight end play, a guy that I would trust the most. And I think besides that, it's tough because I really do like Devonta Smith. And I think if they gave him, even little dink and dunk kind of plays and gave him a chance to run after the catch, like he was the best yards after catch guy in the NFL draft. He could be useful, but that's just not what they've done with him all year. And I don't know why you'd expect that to change. So I think Goddard, out of all the pass catching options, probably has to be your top one for the Eagles.
And for Tampa, Gronk, Evans, do you look towards like a Tyler Johnson or any of these other kind of tertiary options?
So I think if Brashad Perriman gets in, he's kind of interesting. He's actually been a lower ADOT guy than he's ever been at any point in his career, a 9.4 air yards per target this year. So they've been using him so far in this, this limited time frame that he's been playing, and sort of that Antonio Brown / Godwin role where, Evans is still the one who's going to go down deep. And then Perriman, even though he has historically been the guy who's been, we remember a couple of years ago with Jameis, he was getting 400 air yards a game and what Jameis was doing. Now he's kind of being used like a dink and dunk guy. Maybe it's the age or just the need that they have at that spot. But with no Cyril Grayson, I think that, to me, Perriman, somebody I've had a predisposition to so that you could couch it accordingly. But I do think a guy that is interesting to me in this spot because people just don't trust him, aren't going to be on him. But he's been running as many routes as anybody, since the Bucs have lost pretty much all their guys who've been important in the earlier parts of the year.
All right. So, Alex, we know the Sunday running back situation is Leonard Fournette, great price point, really high optimal lineup percentage. That's our boom bust tool as well. And I guess I could just throw this out there now. We're running a promo for $1. You'll get our Express NFL Pass, $1. All of our showdown content is included. We got a bunch of main slate stuff. You got the lineup builder light in there, and a lot of it for $1 the whole week. All of our NFL Express Pass. But the big thing is ownership, the top plays tool, optimal lineup percentages for all of the showdown games. I would personally wait until tomorrow to take advantage of it, right? Use the promo code Super Wild. That's it, right, Tyler? Super Wild, all one word, all caps. We always come up with some wild shit, so I got to be careful. Super Wild, all one word, all caps. Wait till tomorrow because since it's all of the showdown content and you're getting an insane amount of value, do it tomorrow so then you're getting next weekend's showdown content as well. $1. Wait till tomorrow. Super Wild, or just go to awesemo.com/promos and click it, and you'll have more than just wild card weekend of all of the showdown content and main slate content. Not all of our main slate content, but a good amount of tools to take advantage of. So wait till tomorrow, plug that in, awesemo.com/promos, Super Wild, $1, one single dollar for the Awesemo Express NFL Pass. You can't beat that. It's an awesome promo. I actually asked these guys to put this together for the upcoming week because you can take advantage of so much heading into the playoffs. So hopefully we'll see you over there. And you can join our Discord as well if you want. All right. Was I on you, Spags? I can't even remember. Oh, no, Alex. Running backs. What are we doing outside of Fournette?
So Darrell Williams looks like one of the best options. At this point, we don't know if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to play or not. If he doesn't play, it's even better for Williams. But I think at this point, Edwards-Helaire has been out long enough that Williams would probably get the bulk of the work if Edwards-Helaire plays. We did see that last year in the playoffs that Edwards-Helaire was kind of banged up and Williams still got more of the work. So besides that, Eli Mitchell, Najee Harris, and Ezekiel Elliott, all like reasonable options, but yeah, no one's really jumping out at me.
Spags, does anyone jump out at you from Mitchell to Zeke to any of these KC backs, depending on who plays? And of course, Najee Harris, 12.5-point dog, but is the volume going to be enough for him?
Just Najee, I think the elbow injury, not great for him too, missing some practice down the stretch. I don't know if that limits his workload and maybe gets some more Benny Snell in the mix, but makes him an interesting tournament play, but probably not a guy you want to bank on heavily. I do think Eli Mitchell is somebody that I'm intrigued by banking on heavily, and this might be informed by the fact that Pete and I on Splash Play have really thought that San Francisco is a team that is kind of a dark horse Super Bowl candidate, odds-wise, or right in the middle of the pack. But yeah, they're a team like in terms of how they're built, in terms of how Kyle Shanahan does things, like running the ball defensively, not as good as they were a few years ago, but they have the weapons in Debo and Kittle. You also have some guys who you can rotate in and be useful besides them. And then Eli Mitchell's just been a monster all year. And he's somebody that DFS wise, I unfortunately have not played enough of. And then every week I'm like, I wish I played this guy. He's so good. He gets touches 51% of the time when he's on the field. Like that's an amazing number. I think the highest actually might be the highest mark on the Sunday slate too. Like he's really good. And I think there's a game script or a lot of game scripts where Mitchell's useful and they stay in that game with the Cowboys, don't get dusted. I suppose there's a chance that could happen, but because I'm a Niners believer, I think that Eli Mitchell's going to be useful. And if that game's even remotely competitive, he's going to probably get in the end zone and get a good amount of work.
Shanahan loves him. No matter how many times he gets injured, he comes back. He immediately injects him straight into the offense with 20 carries or more. So
he's getting injected probably a lot of ways with all the injuries he's had.
Yeah, that's right.
That boy's broken everything on his body at some point.
When I said that, I was like, there's a joke in there somewhere for sure. There's a tag somewhere. But yeah, it's a weird spot. Like with Najee, with the elbow, Zeke's just been so wildly inefficient is the problem. So inefficient. Does he get opportunities? Sure, he's going to get a lot of work. And of course, we're waiting on Tony Pollard's status, or not his status, but his, like he's going to play, but what's his involvement look like with that plantar fascia? It's weird. And then Kansas City's tough as well. That's why we got Live Before Lock and Deeper Dive tomorrow. And of course, as Spags mentioned, his Splash Play podcast, and be sure to check out all his work at Football Outsiders and over at Edge Sports. Doing a lot of stuff these days, man.
Yeah, a lot of stuff and nothing at the same time. So I think that's sort of that's the way it goes. When I miss doing NBA, like I kind of not watching the shows because like it's so chaotic this year more than ever. But maybe someday I'll get to do those streets and get to join all of you guys just rallying off or railing off constant COVID changes every single day.
There were a couple of weeks there that were brutal. Man, it just didn't end. It was interminable. But welcome back anytime, man. You know that.
I'm always happy to do free labor for you guys whenever.
We don't pay our people anyway. No, of course not. Of course we do. Alex, wide receivers, tight ends, and then let's give our top fades, pivots, and our favorite bet of the week. I know Spags came equipped with one of each. When it comes to the top tier of the position with Debo, and we talked about Evans quite a bit, Kelsey, Gronk, like the tight end position's kind of stacked for a 3-game slate. Who are your favorite spots to get to here?
So I think at tight end, we got a pretty good mix of options here with Kelsey and Kittle both being on the same slate. I think that Kittle, like the performances have been pretty uneven where he was he was balling like a month ago and then all of a sudden like he's doing nothing, and to me that's just kind of fluky. I think that averaging all those out makes sense, and if you do that, he looks like a great play that maybe people are going to fade to recency bias, so he might be my favorite on the Sunday slate.
Okay, yeah, and odds, our projections, if you go over to Odd Shopper, love Kittle this week. We can talk about that at the end of the show, but yeah, we've got him 69% win rate, over 4.5 receptions, basically even money on FanDuel, because at Odd Shopper we just give you the best bet no matter what book, depending on where you live. And yeah, and receiving yards, we also have Kittle projected way over that best bet at Sugar House. But yeah, 49.5 receiving yards is the prop. We got him at 71.8, 72% expected win rate, 35% expected ROI. Throw that up on the screen too, Tyler, for anyone that wants to check out Odd Shopper. It's totally free. I hit a banger on the parlay builder yesterday too, Alex, with the I actually went with the chalk eater, 5-leg, all NBA props, hit each and every one of them comfortably, man. It feels good when that parlay builder hits. That's awesome, man. You don't do any work. You just plug it in.
You gotta love the chalk eater one, especially because who doesn't love just like a parlay full of chalk?
But still got it to 7-1 odds. Like it still was, decent return. But it's just nice because you go in there like, okay, I don't need to build my own parlay. They build it for me with better projections than I can make. So yeah, I try to take advantage of that. Anyway, Spags, round us out here on the Sunday slate, and we'll have Sunday Deeper Dive Live Before Lock too. I think like 4 hours again with where you go at wide receiver, where you go at tight end, anyone really specific from a value standpoint or top tier standpoint that you just feel is necessary to get a lot of this week?
So I'm a little bit more down on Kittle, and I guess this is kind of going against, I love going against Alex on these shows and immediately being proven wrong, especially now that he's finally got that 7-figure nut, and I'm just like,
any given Sunday, bro.
But I'm going to push back on George Kittle. I think the thing with Kittle, the reason he rose up was that they didn't have Eli Mitchell in, and they started doing those gimmicky things with Debo getting handoffs. And that's really, to me, why I think paying the price tag on Debo going to be really tough. And I think just looking at him, where Debo's just shy of 8K on DraftKings, Kittle's under 6K. I think people are going to go Kittle's way a little bit more, but Debo, when he was getting that full pass catching role, was an absolute monster, and he could still get the gimmicky handoff. So he's a guy that I want to get above the field on, and I'm willing to spend the money and try to take on some different constructions as a result. But that's one guy that jumped out to me. I do think Travis Kelce as well, on the same token, like a guy came on a little bit stronger down the stretch, really underperformed all year, and people have written him off as a result. I'm willing to buy in for the playoffs just because I think the targets get concentrated. Tyreek Hill being banged up probably doesn't help that much either. And you do have a million weapons for Kansas City, but Kelce, is the one they really do trust. And even though he's probably looking a little bit closer to wash than I think people would want to admit, I think on this slate at his price tag, I'd rather get a little more money go his way and then just take some value stabs, some 3K guys, some 4K guys, at least one spot, just try to afford both Debo and Travis Kelce in some lineups.
So we try and give the people what they want around here. And I would be remiss to not hit on these two things before we go. So Alex, I want to ask you, and then same thing to Spags. When it comes to value receivers, I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. So hear me out. One, if Juju Smith-Schuster plays, he has minimum salary. If they say that he's not going to be limited, and we do not know yet, but it does appear that he's trending towards playing, and this was a shoulder injury, not a lower body injury. So if he's conditioned, who knows? Maybe he's out there for a lot, and it takes away from an obvious like Ray McLeod situation. Does he become viable at minimum salary? And do you have any concerns that as almost 2 touchdown favorites, the Kansas City Chiefs use Tyreek Hill in a similar fashion, and Byron Pringle ends up getting more opportunities as he did in that win over the Broncos in week 18? Floor is yours. And then Spags, same question to you. I think these are 2 big pieces for this week.
Yeah, I think Juju is a killer play. Being the cheapest receiver that's going to be playing, and also a pretty good one. We have him at a projection of 8 points on 3K. So he's going to be a great value this week. We'll have to wait and see what the ownership will be because that news broke this morning. And then one of the guys that's kind of popping out to me that no one's going to be on is Juwan Jennings for San Francisco. It looks like his role might be threatened by the return of Mohamed Sanu, but Sanu is on the IR still. They didn't activate him. So Juwan Jennings actually ran routes on 83% of plays last week. He has a pretty good target share too. So it looks like no one's on him. He could be a difference maker this week.
Spags, same thing, baby. What do we got?
Yeah, I think Juwan Jennings is a guy that's been pretty good throughout the year too, and I've happened to luck onto him a couple times here, and he helped out at low price tags. And I think Alex is definitely I'm on the same page there. Juju, we all know him and how he's been in the Steelers offense, being the low A dot guy. But this year, that actually has been a benefit before he got hurt, where Ben is also throwing real low, just 7 yards per attempt on the year. So I think Juju coming back in, assuming that he does get a decent workload, obviously if we get some reports indicating that he'll be good to go for a full game's worth of work, and it seems like that's the case. Like I think he's worth taking that stab as well. And then I also wouldn't mind going to Byron Pringle. I know I mentioned him and wanted to go Kelce a little bit more, but Pringle under 4K when he's basically been the number 2 here. Maybe DeMarcus Robinson gets a few looks in the end zone, and I think that throws people off the scent. But Pringle's been shockingly good this year and pulled ahead of Mecole Hardman for a lot of stretches of the season as well. I think in the playoffs you may see that rewarded, that Pringle's just been a reliable source. And at under 4K, like I think he's not so cheap that people are going to go like, oh, I got to lock him in. But he's 3,900, and he can definitely get you to some of the higher price guys. So I think going Pringle's way would speak to me in a meaningful way.
Beautiful. Well, this has been fun, boys. We wrap it up the same way we do every week here on The Contrary with our top fade, top pivot, and favorite bet. And I should point out too that even if you're not looking to sign up at Awesemo, we have free content today. Player projections for NBA if you're getting into that 9-game action, NHL ownership projections, and MMA rankings, all of them entirely free over at awesemo.com. So let's do this. Spags, we'll go to you first as our guest. Top fade, top pivot, and favorite bet for wild card weekend.
the top fade for me, I think, for the Sunday is going to be going against George Kittle. It's not a crazy amount of ownership going his way, so this honestly is not that brave a take. But I think if you can get a little bit less than the 30% that the field's expected to go some different directions, I think that's going to be beneficial, especially if you do go a little more Debo's way. And then pivot-wise, I don't want to really advocate for this that strongly because, it's a contrarian show, so I'll be strong with it. But Joe Mixon, I think taking him out of your lineups, going Josh Jacobs' way, I really like that as a construct. I think Vegas has overperformed in every sense, and I think Rich Bisaccia, I didn't know who he was going into the year. Love seeing a proud Italian-American come in and do some meaningful things, and I think he's really taken them in a direction that they can maybe pull it a lead here and have Josh Jacobs be valuable and keep Joe Mixon at bay. So I think going Josh Jacobs' way, leaving out Joe Mixon is the pivot move I would make for the Saturday slate.
Who's the greatest Italian NFL player that's ever played?
So we've debated this a lot. I think Vinny Testaverde came up a lot for people. There's, I think, is Mark Gastineau somebody? He might be, I know, he might be more French. It's tough to dig through it. The most recent one was Ben DiNucci, where I was hoping he'd be useful coming out of JMU, and he's done nothing. And there was some guy like a Giovanni something on the Panthers this year. Laffy, you don't know how much we've been keeping up with Italian players.
Oh, Giovanni Bernard, right?
No, there's a Giovanni Ricci or something that was, Gio Bernard. Yeah, of course. A proud Italian-American, Gio Bernard.
Kyle O'Quinn, right? Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. One day we're going to have one good player. And I think that's the thing I'm hoping for happens in the next 5 years that I'm still doing content.
Maybe. I typed in best Italian NFL players and the first guy to pop up was Joe Montana. So
we're stretching there.
Yeah, we're stretching.
Joe Montana. Welcome to the family.
Yeah. Alex, fade, pivot, and of course, your best bet of the week.
My fade is Gabriel Davis for this weekend. So he's played on 90% of snaps over the last 5 games before that he played. And those have all coincided with Emmanuel Sanders either being injured in one of those games or out completely. So if you go back to the game where Sanders was in, Davis only ran routes at about 30% of plays on an average week. So if Davis had been performing well, I could see him like taking over from Sanders. But last week he went 3 out of 14 targets for 39 yards, which is a horrible performance. So I won't be surprised if they just don't hesitate to replace those routes with Emmanuel Sanders. So that's my pivot. And then my bet is under on Gabriel Davis receiving yards.
All right. I love it. I'll wrap this one up. So fade for me, Deontay Johnson. He's still getting a good amount of ownership, but the problem is he's getting essentially the same amount of ownership as Mike Evans. And I think that's preposterous. I mean, much higher total for Evans. And you might say, yeah, well, they're getting Fournette back and they could have the lead. Doesn't matter. They throw the ball regardless. So yeah, you get some wind in there. He's still the highest pass play percentage team in the league without Godwin, without Antonio Brown. And I just think Mike Evans, also a touchdown machine, is in a spot that is markedly better than Deontay Johnson. And they're not even far apart in price. So that's my pivot off of Deontay Johnson. Favorite bet, I'll go Mixon over rushing yards. And according to OddsShopper, we've got him well over. We got him projected for almost 100 rushing yards. His prop at 74.5. Best one you'll find is at FanDuel -114 on the over. I mean, yeah, that's just, we got him projected away. 30% expected ROI, 69% expected win rate. Those are beautiful numbers. So give me Joe Mixon there. And that'll do it for us. Thanks as always for hanging out. Follow Spags at Chris Spags. Check out the Splash Play Pod. Check out his work at Edge Sports and Football Outsiders. Of course, follow Alex at Awesemo DFS and myself at Laffy_D. And hey, shout out to Tyler Zander for producing this show. As always, Spags, always a blast, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys. A lot of fun to be here. And I guess everybody strap in, get ready for the Patriots to ruin everything you're thinking about the playoffs on Saturday. That's what I'm going to give as my final words.
And it seems like you are now a Philly fan, and I embrace you for that. Prepared for years and decades of pain.
I mean, I am not a Philly fan, to be clear. I will do everything I can to make myself not be an Eagles fan, but unfortunately it's going to be a house of Eagles fans. And also to everybody out there, make sure to play my son at 3K on DraftKings in 20 years when he is in the NBA after my strong coaching hand pays off.
That's right. Spags got a baby due in March, man. Big things happening in the Spags family. Alex, anything else?
Yeah, Spags, man, I can't wait to see it be the next LeVar Ball. That would be beautiful. But this should be a fun weekend. We get a triple dip with NFL Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and playoffs. It's going to be a great one. Good luck.
Good luck, guys. We'll catch you back here soon. Peace. LeVar Ball. Could you imagine Spags?